Hello everyone, my name is Darius and thank you for tuning in to the Game Junkie. Today we'll be restoring an old and dirty Nintendo 64 controller with a broken joystick. The joystick is loose and when it gets to this point it loses its accuracy and responsiveness, making it difficult if not impossible to use in games. We'll go through disassembly, cleaning and repair of the original joystick, as well as why it fails. So, let's get to it. First things first, let's disassemble the controller to gain access to the internals in the joystick module. Disassembly starts with 9 Phillips point screws located all around the backside of the controller. Now that we're inside the controller, we'll remove the joystick module by first detaching the cable that's attaching the board to the joystick module, then by unfastening the 3 Phillips head screws that are holding down the joystick module. Those 3 screws are outlined here. The first thing we'll want to do is repair this joystick. We'll come back to the rest of the controller components for a deep cleaning later once we get started on repairing this. The box that houses the joystick components has 1 small Phillips screw here on the outside of it. Once undone, we'll unclip the 2 latches on the opposite side to expose the internals. As you can see, we are greeted by a load of white powdery plastic dust, which is evidence of years of wear and the reason why all these N64 controller joysticks eventually fail, given enough time. Now that we've gained access to the joystick's internal components, we'll separate them out and clean them of any dust and debris. I use isopropyl alcohol, Q-tips, and a lint-free shop towel to do so. The next step in the process is to repair the joystick and the joystick bowl. We'll need to build the plastic below the joystick back up, and to do this, I use a 2-part epoxy putty. Commonly, you can find this at a hardware store or online. If you've never used 2-part epoxy, simply rip off a piece and mix it together in between your fingertips into a ball shape until it reaches a uniform color. Place that small epoxy ball you made into the white plastic bowl. To prepare for the next step, we'll drop a few droplets of water onto the epoxy to prevent it from sticking to the marble. Now, using the marble to form a bowl in the epoxy, push down into the bowl with a twisting motion. This will form the bowl shape while also pushing excessive epoxy to the lip of the bowl. Remove any excess epoxy that forms at the lip of the bowl with a sharp knife. You'll want to repeat the process until you no longer see excessive epoxy building up on the sides of the bowl. This may take a little bit, but keep at it for the best results, as if you have to come back to this later on, it won't be nearly as easy. I also use a small strip of the epoxy that we removed from the bowl to repair the worn down black bracket. I also used a wet knife to flatten the epoxy, which we can later trim if we added too much onto the bracket. With the epoxy set in place, we'll need to wait at least 30 minutes for it to dry and harden before we reassemble the joystick. While we wait for that, let's restore the rest of this controller. Since the other components are still working, this mainly will be about deep cleaning the board, buttons, and shell. After putting the shell and buttons through a bath of hot soapy water, I use a magic eraser to remove stubborn dirt and markings on the controller shell. Now, while we wait for the shell, buttons, and membranes to dry, I clean up the board with a soft toothbrush and more isopropyl alcohol. Back to the joystick. The epoxy should be dry before continuing. Before we reassemble it, I clean up excess epoxy on that black bracket and do some more cleaning on the plastic with a piece of magic eraser. Now that the components are looking as good as new, we prepare the joystick for reassembly. The reassembly of the joystick can be a little confusing, so pay attention to the steps in the video to get it reassembled properly. Once the top side of the joystick is put back together, we'll use some PTFE lubricant on the contact points of the joystick and the white bowl. This lubricant will hopefully prevent corrosion from happening again in the future like it did previously. So long as you get the right components in the right places, the reassembly process is actually simple. You'll want to pay attention to the black gears on the top bracket and the bottom bowl to make sure that they are aligned. With both the top and the bottom of the joystick module reassembled, it's time to push them back together. Press the two pieces together, clipping the two fasteners, and then tightening it up with the single Phillips head screw. Now that the joystick is repaired, the board is cleaned, and the rest of the components are clean and dry. We'll speed through the reassembly process, reassembling it just as we disassembled it. Everything feels great. None of the buttons are obstructed, and the joystick flicks nice and easy, but is a lot more stiff than it was before. To really test our results though, let's get into some gameplay. Thank you all for tuning into this retro recovery. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I truly appreciate your feedback, and I do my best to respond to everyone that takes the time to comment. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. Thank you again. Goodbye.